Hi, I'm Warren Zenna, founder and CEO of the CRO Collective, and welcome to the CRO Spotlight Podcast. This show is focused exclusively on the success of chief revenue officers. Each week, we have an open, frank, and free-form conversation with top experts in the revenue space about the CRO role and its critical impact on B2B businesses. This podcast is the place to be for CROs, sales and marketing leaders who aspire to become CROs, and founders who are looking to appoint a CRO or want to support their CRO to succeed. Thanks for listening. Now let's go mix it up. Welcome to this episode of the CRO Spotlight Podcast. I'm Warren Zenna. I am the founder of the CRO Collective. And, there is I'll say sort of like, I don't know if I'm characterizing it properly, but let's just call it for the sake of some, making it provocative. There's a crisis in marketing in the B2B space right now. Why do I say that? Well, I say it because I think it would be hard to disagree with the reality that marketing has sort of become almost like split up into little pieces, and it lost some of its leadership unification. And having sold marketing my entire career and having a marketing agency of my own, I have a perspective on this that's not just an observer. I'm in the middle of it, And I saw an amazing post on LinkedIn about a month or so ago, maybe a couple months ago, from a brilliant woman named Clayton, who made this sort of provocation. She's leaving Pavilion. She has this little strong opinion about the community's positioning around marketing, and I'll let her characterize it, but it was really provocative and it was really insightful. And I was like, wow, what a smart person, what a great post. And then it resulted in all this stuff. And it turned into a lot of conversations about that particular topic, which I think is an important one as we watch the way B2B is evolving. So anyway, I thought I'd invite Emma to come on and we talk about it because I have a lot of opinions about this. So here she is.
No, thank you. What a lovely intro. Yeah, loads to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's start with the post.
Let's do that. So if you don't mind, I was actually going to read the whole thing, but I thought I'd rather have you summarize it in a fresher way. So what was the post, and importantly, as you contextualize it, sort of what was the impetus for the post?
Well, I've been in marketing for 26, 27 years, and I've been a consultant for 8. And so I've seen what great marketing is, and I've seen how marketing over the last, I would say, 6 years, probably maybe the last 3 for sure, has eroded into something I don't recognize anymore. But I joined, you've mentioned the community. I tried to keep them nameless, but you went out there and you did it.
I say it. I'm out there.
I love it. Yep. I love it. So I joined Pavilion looking for somewhere.
And just to be honest, I have no negative opinion about Pavilion at all. I think it's a great platform and it's good. Like anything, even like mine, everything has its sort of ups of good things and bad things. I just know that, it was, and again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure I'm clarifying this, that, Pavilion is a big community. There's a lot of people in that community. And a lot of people that are in my followers, I have my 15,000 or so followers are in Pavilion. So, when you made a statement, plus you have a big reputation, right? You're not like some little mouse, you're an expert. So it had an impact. And I think that's an important thing. And not specifically calling out a platform as much as the implications of what these sort of larger groups and how the collectivism formulates around a certain discipline. So that was my point.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I don't have any, as we call it in England, beef with anybody,
We say beef. Yeah, love it.
You say beef too.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I just saw somebody at a dinner, having a great time, good conversations, and I looked up Pavilion. I've never heard of them, and thought, hey, this looks good. I was probably only 2 years into the SaaS tech world, and I thought, great, I'll go and I'll really expand my network, my horizons, and actually my own understanding of how this sector works, having come from pharmaceuticals, very highly compliant industries of healthcare and professional services and finance and fintech. So I joined Pavilion and I was with them for a year. And the post just came from a real reflection as I was cancelling my membership that morning. It was a Saturday morning. I was sat on my sofa and I'm just going to reflect. And that's what I do. My posts are all just reflections of what's in the moment. I don't plan them. I just sit and write them and post them
you and me
all
both.
Times a day.
I just start writing.
I don't create because people want to create. Oh, I've got to put a post out today. There's days I don't post. There's days I post twice, right? It's musings for me. And I thought, actually, why do I feel I seem to be the only person that feels like this? And so I just thought I'm going to put a musing out there. And I didn't actually tag them in because I didn't want to be
Yep.
provocative. I didn't want to start any, I really dislike that rage bait. I don't like you. Come and have a fight
Yep.
with me. And,
And it
I
read
don't
that
like
way.
that.
It read that way. That's what I liked about it. It was very classy and very clear, and it was clearly not a provocation. You were just making a statement about a space that you obviously feel very passionate about.
Yeah. And I attended their courses, the CMO school, and it was run interestingly by a CRO who used to be a CMO, but I didn't learn anything. And okay, I was thinking, well, maybe because you are experienced, we all live with that imposter syndrome of what could
Yep.
I possibly know
Yep.
more? How do I evolve? And I did it again. I did it twice. And I thought, yeah, no, this is still the same stuff. And I thought, I'm not learning anything. But then I really reflected on it and thought, what has happened to marketing? Like, this isn't marketing. This is, how do you keep the CRO happy? How do you keep the board and the CEO happy? This isn't, how do you connect with your market? How do you go and position in a market and build value propositions and differentiations and strategic thinking that really fits into what I call the impact zone, where you've got a customer and a market need and you've got the business needs, and the business need is revenue. Like, we're all there to make money. But isn't it better to do that where you're bringing the market and the customers with you instead of just going and shouting at them, hoping that you're going to drag a few in? And what I can really see is businesses hit a plateau when there's only so many people you can drag into your world of, come and buy this thing, if you haven't captured hearts and minds. And all that was missing.
Yep.
So I just thought, actually, I don't want to be part of something that is teaching what I fundamentally disagree with. And
Mhm.
it goes against all the principles of what really good, excellent marketing is. And why am I paying for a membership where I don't, like, it's an emperor's new clothes for me?
Mhm.
And so I just thought, okay, I'm leaving because this is the problem. This is part of the problem. And you're right, we are in a crisis. The marketing profession is in a total identity crisis, a perception and a branding. Like, we market out, but we never market ourselves in a profession. And so I started to do a lot of research on, why are we here? Like, I don't recognize our profession anymore. And I thought, well, this is part of the problem. Then I started looking at VCs and how they are looking at CMOs as disposable CMOs. And I've written lots of different articles bringing together, like, what's the CMO CEO disconnect and what's the CMO CFO disconnect, and what's their perception of us versus how we should be showing up. And so there's just gaps everywhere where marketing is sort of shrunk into this very siloed, alienated, misunderstood, misaligned, sidelined profession. But actually, if you're a marketeer now, you're seen to, if I say to someone, hey, I'm a marketeer, they think I just do the promotion, which is, 1/4 of a marketing mix, which is 1/4 of what marketing does. So that's like 16% of what marketing is. And I'm afraid, actually, I'm now having to say, actually, I'm a business strategist, because that's what a marketeer is. They're a business strategist. They set the vision, they set the objectives, they set the strategic levers, they understand the market, they do all that market orientation before they even start to do any tactics. And, marketing is this hamster wheel of tactics. And then we do a bit of measure and test and grow. And businesses are not progressing and growing, and they're falling over and not viable because they do not have people like me, who is a real old school strategic commercial thinker, sitting on that board. And they've sort of almost been pushed out of the way in favor of a CRO or a chief growth officer, or they're put under the CFO. Well, it's like, we don't know what to do with marketing, so we're just going to put it in all these different places and chop it up and put it here, because people don't get it. They think it's just, a few carousels on LinkedIn and a brochure for the sales team. And I think Pavilion are feeding that narrative. And I just wanted to say, hey, I can't be part of the erosion of a profession, of a community that is, putting the ink on the paper and signing the death warrant. So I'm kind of out. And that post sat, Warren, for 36 hours just in my own network of people. And it was only when one of the UK chapter leads picked it up and commented on it, but didn't just comment on it, tagged all the senior leadership team across the world into the post.
Yep.
That then went viral. So crazy, I had to turn the comments off. And it became vicious. It became a very binary us versus them. The argument, the reflections were not had. It became about one person, me and one person going head to head with a whole big crew of army, like fight behind it. I've heard on reflection that there was a Slack channel dedicated to it for the entire weekend, looking at how they could totally decimate my opinion. And then my inbox was then full for, because, these posts go on and on for days. My inbox was full for an entire 10 days of people saying, A, I agree with you. B, I'm sorry you've been treated this way. And C, actually, thanks for saying something, because our marketing profession is in crisis, but we daren't say anything because it's in such crisis. We're scared. And I didn't see anybody talking about this bubbling crisis until I sort of almost lifted a lid on it by saying, guys, this just doesn't feel right anymore. Like, I don't know what we're doing anymore. And what that's then done is, it's mobilized marketeers that feel the same way, senior marketeers who go, yeah, do you know what? I'm taking jobs that I could have done 10 years ago. But what it's also done is created a lot of vociferous response from a camp who don't want to believe that the community and the leader they're following have got it wrong. And so they're doubling down on the narrative and becoming quite vicious and, were calling me out. And, there were some really poor behaviors that came. But, all you need to do with that is sit back. Like you said, classy is something that I always try and do. You just got to sit back and let people hang themselves or drink their own poison. And I think the truth will always rise to the top. And interestingly, that post was actually back in, I think it was end of Jan, early Feb. And people are still talking about the post. People are still creating content around the content.
They are. I see it all the time. And I could tell, there's a certain sort of, we'll call it a fingerprint, if you will, that when I see marketeers posting something about things, I could tell that there's a relationship it has to what you sort of originally started. So look, good for you. I think it's great. Yeah, I love it. I think it's good. Like, you have
it got people talking. It's got people thinking. It's got people
stir
curious.
Things up, and I don't think you were saying anything that obviously, if I scream in the woods and no one yells back, well, then obviously I'm not talking about something important. But if I scream in the woods and I get yelled at by 1,000 animals, well, I hit a nerve, right? So why is that, right? And I think that's a good thing. So I think it's great. Like, when I read what you did, and again, I think you and I probably have majority agreement. I mean, we can get into, actually, I have a really interesting way I want to talk to you about this, but generally speaking, there's no question about the fact that I agree with you that marketing has become this weird thing, and I have a strong opinion about why. I'm just curious what you think. Like, if you were to summate, as you will, why did that happen? What happened that made it this way?
So I wrote a series called Who Shot Marketing, which
that
started as a
that
white
mystery
paper.
Series thing you did. That was awesome. I loved it. That was great. Yeah, it was really great.
I did the research and I was like, okay, where did this start? Who has, who are the stakeholders in this? And the more that I was researching and building the story and the narrative around it for a white paper, actually, I thought actually this is more than a white paper. This is it's a story that needs to be told, which is why I made it into like a crime series. And it is about, who shot marketing. Mary Marketing's on the floor, the VC, the CFO, the CEO, the CRO, the recruitment companies, the AI bots, the professional organizations, like they're all implicit in this room where marketing's been shot and is, bleeding out. Like, who's responsible? And so part of this series was to go around and look and check in on each of them and the relationship that they've had with marketing over the years and their contribution. But actually, press pause if you haven't read it and you want to read it and you want to get to the end.
Yeah, that's okay.
But the big grand reveal, spoiler alert, is that actually marketing's done it to itself. And
so it was like a suicide in a way?
Yeah, kind of. I kind of didn't really know how to close that because, like, how do you do that? But it was like a death by a thousand cuts. But
Okay,
we sealed the
sure, I
deal.
understand.
Like
Yeah.
we did it to ourselves. We basically we didn't stand strong and firm against all the challenges that were coming to us in the changing market. You know, there is some responsibility with the professional organizations who've been asleep at the wheel and are just there for selling courses and you know, selling the letters after the name. I've bought into that, but I feel it's the way to differentiate in the market
Mhm.
because actually what's happened is the profession has been flooded with people who are not trained and educated and qualified and have taken a HubSpot course or a Google course. No offense to anyone that's done that, but then would class themselves as a senior marketing leader and are now leading teams and organizations. And that is scary. Like I'm okay with you coming into the profession, taking your HubSpots, doing the role. But when you step into a senior leadership role where you're driving profit and margin and customer acquisition at a board level, I have a problem with that because what happens is you're not going to perform at the level of what marketing is. You're going to be very tactical because that's what those qualifications and accreditations take. And you probably haven't had the investment in leadership training to be able to stand up and have those challenges in a boardroom and know how to operate at that level so that you have got gravitas in that room and you've got the ability to influence with credibility, but also with your softer skills. And what's happened is people have looked at marketing and gone, oh, well, that's a bit shit, isn't it? We're going to sideline you and we're going to bring someone else in to do that role. And that's what's happened with the splitting of marketing because we haven't been able to hold ourselves to the standards that are really needed to be able to say we're a growth driver. We have become a cost center because that's all we've known. And we're watching younger generations come through, you know, going into their YouTube stations and saying, hey, I made millions of growth and revenue. You just need to do this. You know, F the establishment and the qualifications, you can do it this way. And it's really attractive to people that want to do the quick wins, the quick money making. But you just look at it and go, that's just going to fall over because there is no gravitas or foundation or strength or quality in what they're doing. And customers are clever. Like we are really insulting our customers and our markets to think that that's an option. But sadly, it happens. And then that narrative is fed. You know, we look at unicorns and we go, look, they did it that way, so we can do the same. But different company, different organization, different market, different sector, different people, different everything, you know. It's really hard to build those unicorns. You know, it's right place, right time, right product, right funding, right backing, right mindset. And it's hard to emulate. But yeah, we've got a real crisis of, well, like, let's call it like incompetence in our profession.
Thanks again for listening to the CRO Spotlight podcast. We're excited about all the great guests we have. And more importantly, we're excited mostly about you for being avid listeners and supporting the work that we do here. Feel free, please, to share the CRO Spotlight podcast with any of your colleagues. We just think there's a great wealth of information here and want to get the word out to as many people as possible. And your support of the show is really appreciated. I wanted to share information about a program that we offer called the CRO Masters Council. The CRO Masters Council is a bi-monthly group of 6 seasoned chief revenue officers who are looking for a chief revenue officer board of directors, so to speak, that they could share what's going on with them, collaborate with ideas, get some feedback on what's going on in their current role. And these are great conversations. I facilitate them. The CRO Masters Councils, again, they're twice a month and they last for at least 6 months to a year. So if you're interested in having your own CRO suite, your own board of directors of chief revenue officers, it's a private, confidential conversation that we have. It's infinitely useful. Imagine having a room full of other chief revenue officers you can talk to and say, hey, I'm working on this, or have you guys figured that out? Or I'm having this issue right now with my business or my results. These are just invaluable conversations with chief revenue officers. Chief revenue officers have a very, very unique role. It's a very lonely job, and only other CROs understand what you're going through. So that's why we created this program. So if you're interested in being a member of the next CRO Masters Council, which we have a number of them being put together right now, just go to my LinkedIn and DM me Masters or Masters Council, and I'll follow up with you and set up a call or send you some more information about it. Looking forward to seeing you there, and thank you. Yeah,
That's where it's gone wrong.
it's great. So I got so many things I want to talk about now, but you just really laid it out. So I'll just kind of lay out. I agree with everything you just said. I think the elements that I tend to be very like I look at the core, primal things that drive stuff, because ultimately that really is what drives things, right? Things like survival and fear, right? Those are all really ultimately underneath every single thing. And I think that if I would say, if you look at the entire B2B business space over the last 10 years, maybe even 20, I think economics, it's always the follow the money sort of thing, I think is a very important way to look at the world we live in, particularly because in the Western world, the economics of our society, and I'm a capitalist, so I want to make sure everyone understands where I'm coming from with this, is that it drives behaviors.
Yep.
And so I think what happened, if I'll look back on it, really a forensic look back, when the internet was created, it opened up an opportunity for scale unseen before, and opportunities to grow businesses in ways that were never done before. And the economics of that particular platform allowed for a lot of people to experiment with it in ways to get money as quickly as possible out of it. It became more like a machine, right, as opposed to So I'm a student of marketing. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and I went to college for art and advertising design and marketing. I was around when the first big holding companies were created in 1985. I went into the advertising and marketing industry as a salesperson, and I sold in the marketing space for my entire career. So I've been connected to all the holding companies. I worked as an executive at 2 of them. I was involved very deeply in the way that these different solutions are formulated and how they're purchased and how they're deployed, how they talk to marketing, how marketing people talk to clients. I have an agency. I've been running it for 20 years. We serve large B2B and B2C companies. I'm very steeped in this. I'm not some observer. Plus, I've sold this stuff my entire career. There are a few things I could say I feel like I'm an expert in, but this is one of them. So you and I are talking about this from an informed perspective, and I could tell you that when the internet came out, it created a frenzy. And then I think the second wave of the internet was the SaaS industry, which produced this repeatable marketplace, which was never heard of before, that you could create products that people could immediately purchase online, boom, and you could repeat that over and over again. And it created a economy, and it created an entirely new economic infrastructure, which is the SaaS and, let's say, even programmatic sales sector, which created an entire industry of investment community that understood that this model could be replicated through purchasing of specific businesses that fell into a category of product that could be sold quickly and had a marketplace solution that could be quickly deployed, quickly purchased, and quickly turned over rapidly, enough so that the numbers would climb enough that the valuations of that business would allow us to go get more money.
Yeah.
And this was the thing that changed all this. If you and I both look back at the amazing marketing of, granted, I'm not crazy about these products, but you cannot deny the amazing power of Procter & Gamble and how they invented this entire idea of building brands around just literally nothing. Like, they formulate some sort of category, but it was all marketing. That is how they went to market. They created an image, they created a story, they created a value proposition, they wrapped it in everything, and they put it on the shelf, and it's a brilliant way that they were able to take products. And the greatest brands in the world, the consumer brands, I think is really where marketing is really most utilized properly, are the ones that build value from messaging and through value proposition and through the construction of an idea and an image and an emotional connection. Those things can be sustained forever. I mean, you look at Nike and Coke and all these. I mean, these are products they're perennial, right? Because of this, right? And they're not even that different. I mean, a Nike sneaker and an Adidas sneaker, if someone gave me the both, I mean, it's a sneaker, but there's something about the way that we've imbued those products with a certain image, and marketing is completely responsible for that. Now you take a product that can be sold in the marketplace, someone can click on it, give you their credit card number and buy it. Marketing, that proposition is not as valuable anymore. In fact, the time that you and I both know it takes to build that kind of equity, it gets in the way of the objective that these companies have. They want this stuff to happen a lot faster. And if I want to create a brand, you and I both know how long it takes and how much time it takes and effort it takes to do that properly. And we also know that once it's done, it's sort of like embedded in the DNA of the consumer. Like, that's it. You can sit on top of that forever as long as you maintain it. And that's where the big opportunities are. But that's long-term thinking. Most of the businesses that you and I are in right now, it's all what's going on next quarter, what's going on this next month. How do we get our valuations? When's our B round? When's our C round? And so when you create an environment like that and all the money is being poured into those types of businesses, it makes sense that marketing would be thought of more as a hammer and a nail and a screwdriver, as opposed to a foundational part of the way in which we go to market. And, the companies that did both were amazing, right? If you can do both these two things at the same time, have the most, I think, in my opinion, probably the most valuable proposition you can have today in the world, which is a combination of immediacy and purchasability, as well as brand and affinity. And, there are companies that get this right. There's no question about it. Just that it's not the norm. It's not the norm. And so what happened, and to kind of reflect what you said, marketers, what they did was, I said they're sort of complicit, but this is where fear comes in, is that marketers still need to work. They want to play their trade. They want to get jobs. They want to maintain their profession. And as it changed, they just changed with it. Okay, I'll become a tactician. I'll become a search engine optimization expert. I'll become a Google Ads expert. I'll become whatever the case may be. All the different like sub industries that were created out of this stuff. And so you had a schooling of 10, 15 years of tactician training in marketing, which we called marketing, which evolved from PowerPoint presentations and collateral creation to advertising, to placement, and performance marketing, to search engine optimization, which I think of those things are really valuable, without the foundational component of who are we? What do we do? What are we solving for? What's our positioning in the marketplace? What are we carving out here? And without that, those tactics become so necessary that if you turn them off for 1 second, the entire brand goes away. You have to survive on that stuff. And it's a very, very difficult survival. But weirdly, someone who's good at those things becomes very valuable in the marketplace because, they sort of found a place where they can create this sort of value proposition for themselves. Like, I can run your programmatic ad campaigns better than anybody can. I can do performance marketing better than anybody can. That's a very valuable person in that environment. But the marketer, the thinker, the philosopher is useless in that framework. And I think that's where we ended up. And I think that now when we have even more complexity in the marketplace and even greater opportunity to be able to sell people things faster and faster, which we know now the consumer is smart, like you said, they don't like this stuff anymore. It's sort of becoming clear that there needs to be a little bit more philosophical, reasoning around this stuff. And I think that's where we're at right now. And that's what sort of had me start my business, which is around the CRO. We can get into that. I don't want to talk about that with you. But I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that little sort of story I just walked you through, and what your thoughts are on that, if it resonates with you or not.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what's happened. But if I can just add to that, what's then happened is those great individual contributors that have got their niche are then really good at what they do. They deliver their outcomes. And so they're promoted rather than understanding all the rest of
Right.
the different elements.
They don't
of
have
marketing.
like a
They're
holistic understanding. They have a specialty, and they become a
How do we get
CMO
there?
based on that specialty, which is not bringing enough
But
of
that's when it falls apart.
I get your point. Yeah,
Because the board or the CEO will go, hang on a second, you were brilliant. Like, what happened? But they can't make that transition.
it's true.
And they're calling themselves a CMO when they're not really a CMO. They're just somebody that was brilliant at SEO or paid media or, whatever it might be, engineering, the
Which
back
are
end of the
incredibly
websites, whatever.
valuable skill sets and make a huge difference, but
Brilliant.
they don't encompass what marketing is as a whole. It's a piece of it.
Yeah. And so when you go up into the leadership role, what do? You dial into your comfort zone and you forget everything else. But a really good, strong CMO will understand, like a puppeteer, which elements of marketing are needed at what point of growth in that particular company. And you're right. You don't really need a CMO puppeteering everything until you get to at least a Series A, probably Series B.
Yep.
You need a really good generalist with a few specialists driving
Yep.
that forward. And actually, I'd argue that the founder should be that CMO because they are so passionate about what they do. They can do the value prop and the
I said
selling
that
and
the
the
founders are
messaging.
usually, in my opinion, they're like the best source material.
Yeah. But then when you grow up and, you get to that sort of late Series A, early Series B, that's when you start to need, because you've proven your product market fit, you're getting to a point now where you are able to scale. Great. That's when you need the strong CMO to come in and go, right, I would put a bit here, I'd put a bit there, understanding the nuances of the segmentation, the targeting, the positioning, the market, the stages, the growth, the channels. They get it.
Yep.
And that's where I think we've gone wrong, is we've just gone, great, let's put you in charge of the whole damn ship. And it's like, we're
Yep.
going into an iceberg.
Yeah. The way that marketers are being incentivized is they're getting rewarded for doing something really well that doesn't necessarily represent the whole of what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, there's that age-old saying, what got you here is not going to get you
That's
there.
right. That's right.
You
That's
know?
it's our motto here at the CRO Collective, in fact.
Yeah.
I love that. So let's do that, because I do want to get into more like, if we kind of, you and I both thinking like storytellers here, right? Get to a point where we can talk about what to do about it, which I know you have a lot of thoughts of. I do too. But I want to just for a second kind of go off on a tangent on another topic, which I think is interesting. And that is this idea that you mentioned it in your writings, that the CMO is to some degree sort of being aspirationally looking to become a chief revenue officer. And I think I could see that there's some wisdom to that. I have a lot of opinions on what CROs should be doing, as you probably understand, and also why they should be doing it and what's going on today. I'd say, like, I'll throw like let's say a postulation at you, and we'll see where we go with this, right? So the reason why I even started this whole business is, similarly, right? I came to a somewhat similar conclusion, and that is I looked at the larger picture, right? Marketing, as you and I both know, is a component of a business. It's not all a business. And revenue, which is, I make a distinction between revenue and sales. It's a much different context, right? Marketing is certainly, in my opinion, it's a revenue generating part of the business, not a cost center. And it's not being used that way. And I think that what's happened is similar to my earlier story. We have a siloed and misaligned revenue model that we've been deploying into the marketplace for a very long time that just doesn't work anymore, which is we have a marketing expert, a sales expert, a customer success expert, and they're all sort of out there deploying their respective departmental goals, and they're being measured differently many times. The stuff that the way marketing is being incentivized to deliver results many times is being done for the purposes that you and I just discussed. And they many times have no translation to sales at all. They're sort of like weirdly not connected to what the sales process is like. And so they live like in this sort of parallel universe. And so the companies that I saw that did really well was where there was someone who had the wisdom to understand that all these pieces should be working together as one thing. They're part of it's like an engine, really. It's not a bunch of parts, it's an engine. And if one of the pieces of an engine breaks, you have to fix that piece of the engine because it affects all the other pieces associated with it. But we didn't build it that way. We built our organizations based on each one of them can sort of run independently, strangely. And that just shows a problem with the model. And my postulation and the way I built my business is that the chief revenue officer, sort of that person who can sort of piece together this whole thing and create a revenue engine with singular leadership, which the problem is that we have too many leaders. So as a result of that, we have this sort of like, fragmentation of different agendas all being rewarded in different ways. And having one leader oversee the entire revenue engine who has, I want to make it clear, has not a sales-focused expertise, which most CROs do, but a business-focused expertise and understands the role that marketing plays in the whole thing, and deploys a marketing initiative or a marketing function that is an integrated one that includes all the stuff that you and I are talking about, so that becomes more realized, and that the CRO then ascends to someone whom could be that person. This requires them to have a certain number of qualifications and competencies that are different than the current profile of a CRO, which tend to be people that come from sales and don't come with that, right? And they're rewarded with that title because of their sales acumen, as opposed to being rewarded for that title because of their business acumen. So my theory, and it's successful, I'm happy, we're training people to think that way and finding people who do. And as a result, we're finding people who come from different parts of the business. So the sales CRO is still certainly part of the equation, but I'm finding a lot of CMOs who are great at this job, RevOps people who are great at this job, because they come into that role with a much more holistic view of the business. So to that end, right, the question I get a lot is, well, what do you do about marketing then? Like, what if you have a CMO and a CRO in your model, Warren, what's the relationship they have? And it's a really provocative question. I have a lot of interest to it. But I think whatever that looks like, however you should decide to make that work within your organization, one thing is clear that I would say, but it's a mandate, is that marketing needs to have a much more elevated role in the way the business is run than it does today, regardless of how you construct it. That means that CRO needs to have a philosophical agreement that that's the case. They can't be one of these sort of sales only led chief revenue officers. That's going to create a problem. And so I just want to throw that out there because I know you mention in a lot of what you talk about the CRO as one of the, you even kind of characterize the CRO as one of the people who might be the one holding the gun, right? So I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on that general idea and how it fits in or squares with your current viewpoint on things.
Thank you so much again for listening to the CRO Spotlight podcast. This podcast is an important plank in the CRO Collective communication strategy, and we're really thrilled to have such great guests on here. So listening and sharing the podcast with other people is really vital because we want to get as many people listening to this great stuff as possible. A couple of things to note. If you're a aspiring CRO or a recently hired CRO or even an old salty CRO, and you're looking to either become a chief revenue officer or improve your chops and gain some more insights and improve your competencies as a chief revenue officer, we offer the CRO Accelerator course. It's 5 years now. It's the first CRO focused course that was out there. It's a 15-week course that is populated by aspiring chief revenue officers and CROs. We're pretty selective in terms of who can be a member of the CRO Accelerator course. It's people who are probably more ready to be a CRO right now. They have a number of years under their belt as a revenue leader, whether it be a sales leader or a marketing leader or even a RevOps leader. And they either want to move into the C-suite or they're CROs that want to just make sure that they win in the role. The CRO Accelerator course, we kick off the next one in mid-May 2025. So if you are interested in being a member of the next cohort, please just write me a note on LinkedIn. Just DM me CRO Accelerator, and we'll set up a time to talk. And then I can send you more information to give you a brochure of the course. So again, CRO Accelerator course, 15-week program for aspiring and newly hired CROs. Take advantage of it. It's been great. And you'll see some more information about it on the website. Thanks.
Gosh, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I guess the first thing that I would say is when I look at the role of the CRO, that goes back to the role of what I would have said the CMO would have had in better times.
Okay.
So
It's fair.
but what I would then add to that is that, every single person in an organization, whether there are 2 of you or 2,002 of you, should have a revenue target.
Yep.
At some point. You should have it. Even the receptionist.
100% agree. Yes.
Everybody, because you're
Everybody
there for that.
should.
Otherwise, what are you doing? You've got to think like that.
You have to be
business is yours,
tied
whether
to
you're
a revenue outcome.
100%. So I then asked the question, well, do you need a chief revenue officer to do the role of what a good old school, and that's not me being purist, that's just what the role would have been before it sort of got diluted.
Had it been left to its devices and ascended the way it should have been, it probably would have turned out that way in some other version of reality. Yeah. Okay.
And 23% of CMOs become a CRO. So I can see, I've labeled that as capitulation, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that, because there were some people really dining out on their content when they did that and got really mortally offended. Mm-hmm. You haven't, by the way, because you're a grown-up. But there are some people... I
thought it's a great point. I mean, it's a really great conversation. I'm not trying to protect any turf. I may change my whole point of view on this over the next 3 or 4 years, because look, how many things did I think were true 10 years ago that I don't think are true anymore, right? And so if I'm not open to thinking differently, then I'm lost, But I'm not there yet. I still do think that what I'm doing makes sense. However, I think you and I are probably in more agreement on this than we are in disagreement about it. But I agree with your point. I think that CMOs, if they were left to do the job that they were capable of, and they ascended to have the sort of level of holistic expertise, and that was taught more, I look at it almost like, you look at like these older generations of, if I may say, you look back at like, let's say Eastern Europe or other parts of the world where, there was a lot of wisdom that was passed down through generations from people to people about like, things like what kind of remedies you should make and the kind of food that you should eat and the kind of ways to take care of certain things. And it's passed down, and that stuff stays inside of the culture because it's very taken care of. It's like, here, before I pass on, you really need to know how to do this thing. I think that some of that sort of apprenticeship is gone. The great marketers, the real superstars, they didn't make it downstream to a lot of people that run marketing today, because I think they're being hired to be specialists. So I don't want to get off on that, but I think that that's sort of like a lot of what you're saying is that there's a purity in the profession that's been diluted.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, so that's my first point. And I look and I go, okay, well, why have they capitulated? Why have they gone? And it's because the CMO role has become secondary. And there are communities, Pavilion One, Sam Jacobs' language is, he talks about ascending to the CRO role from a CMO role, which is really telling, because what that
I get
tells
that.
us,
I get that. Yeah.
the message is that you go up to a CRO. It's the one above.
Yeah.
And so, people are looking around going, hey, listen, this marketing profession's dying a sorry death. It's getting kicked, battered and bruised. Hey, listen, I'm going to get some power. I'm going to get better money. I'm going to get more prestige. I'm going to get better influence. If I step up
As I
into
said,
the CRO
you follow the
role.
money. You follow the money. You follow the prestige, and
that is where I've got the problem.
I get it.
Because actually all they're doing is stepping back into what they were.
Look, that gets to
And
the
we don't
fear
need the
and the
chief
survival
revenue
part of the equation, right? Which is that, we're in an environment, we have to survive. And so I have to kind of capitulate to what's going on. And, it's not easy for everybody to make a stand on stuff, because they have to kind of continue. If I've been in marketing for 20 years and all of a sudden it changes, what am I going to do now? Am I going to become a dentist? I mean, I'm a marketer. It's what I do, So I have
There's a lot of people considering that at the moment. There's plumbers, dog walkers, florists. I mean, I'm getting loads of people going, I'm just going to go back to being a hand profession, because that's where the money's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. There's going to be no one qualified to do it. We're going to go do that.
So true.
Like, marketers are brilliant for seeing what's over the horizon.
That is funny.
Apart from our own demise.
They're much more, they're very good at prognosticating the future than a lot. I agree, because marketers have to think long term. You have to, right? You have to look at the head, at trends, and okay. So
but again, that's like that's seen in the board as like, stargazing and, a little bit of mediumship around the crystal ball. And so again, the facts, the figures, the numbers that the board, the VC, the CEO, the CFO want to talk about, like, we're over here stargazing, predicting the future. And they just look at us and go, what the hell? Like, we need to do this now, because survival is about the quarter. And I get that.
That is the way it is.
We don't have to be binary about this. And the really good marketeers will be able to lean into that conversation and talk numbers just as much as stargaze.
Yep.
So that's the one point I want to make. The second is that, like, I don't know why we keep creating all these new roles, because the chief revenue officer, the chief growth officer, chief brand officer, chief customer officer that keeps coming, they're all the CMO role that used to be what it was, or a sales and marketing director before, we had chief anything.
Yeah.
And what used to happen in my day is I'd have my marketing team and my launch team and my brand teams and my PR and comms, and like all of those disciplines would sit and report to me. And then we would have, like, I grew up in pharma, so you'd have the medical team who were bringing products to market through their clinical trials and phases. You'd have clinical, medical, regulatory. You then have the sales team. The way we handled, bashing down the silos is we'd have cross-functional teams. Like, what's happened to those? Like, why do we suddenly have to have one person ruling everything? Because those skill sets are so different. Not one person can have the skill sets to have good credence to all of those disciplines. And so what we've lost is the ability, the soft skills, the leadership skills that we were all invested in once upon a time before budgets were cut. And, it became this very, cut down to the gristle of an organization. We can't invest in people and growth and development. But when that was happening, people were taught how to have constructive conflict, how to work together, how to collaborate, how to cross-functionally align, how to build strategic plans together, how to execute, how to hold each other to account, how to generate the results and become a high-performing team. Now, imagine if we invested in that instead of creating all these new roles that are 180, 200, 300,000 pound roles. Like, you'd actually have more profit in your business. So that's where I've got a bit of an issue. Like, let's just go back to teaching people how to just be good, decent leaders. And what you've got in a lot of these organizations is toxicity, demotivation, disengagement, unclear, because the wrong people, I think, are in charge trying to fix a problem that actually, if we took a step back, was never really wrong in the first place. It was this new economy that you've talked about that's come in and taken the noise away from what bloody brilliant used to be. And if you just remove that noise and go, okay, great, let's remove that. Let's go back to how this used to operate. It worked. There's nothing wrong with putting that model and those frameworks back into these new economies and new markets for them to accelerate in growth. It's proven, it's tested.
Yep.
Capital economies have been doing this for years and decades and all this time. Like, why are we wanting to change? And the change is creating disruption and chaos and uncertainty and fear. And we know that that's when bad behavior happens. That's when people are making the wrong decisions. They're making decisions from the wrong place. And that's where I think we've fundamentally gone wrong. And we keep trying to put sticking plasters by creating all these new roles. But, break down what the CRO role is. I have no issue with, those people and their role. But actually, all that's happened is you've taken a CMO label off and put it with CRO.
Yeah, it's similar.
All of those different people working together under, we used to call them a golden triangle.
Sure, I get it. I think everything you said is spot on. I just want to make sure that there's something you mentioned in that is important, because I see this a lot and I understand it. I'm sensitive to the reason why this perception seems to come up, which is what you mentioned, this sort of like a pushback on this CRO that I'm referring to as being this sort of like a unrealistic unicorn person, right? And I actually had a really great debate with somebody on this show about this topic, very smart person about that same point. And I'm sure I want to really like make sure I emphasize this point of view on that. I'm not professing or claiming or making some proclamation that this CRO needs to be this sort of like all-knowing, all-powerful person who can run a sales organization, run a marketing organization. That's ridiculous. No one should do that. That doesn't make sense. I'm talking about somebody whom, and again, I think I would kind of two things that I would sort of put a point onto it. One is misalignment, which I think is a cancer in businesses, right? You have this sort of misaligned revenue functions, which you have these three things running around. That to me is like, that's the cancer that needs to be fixed. That's one thing. And if we all agree, which I think most do, okay, fine. So let's fix it. So that means that you need some kind of roll up, right, of that, and you need someone overseeing it. That would be one solution for that. The second part is, what does this person do? Like, what's the difference between leading revenue and leading marketing or leading sales, right? What you mentioned before, this idea of the sales and marketing leader, whom I think was like the precursor to the CRO I'm talking about. This is someone who had a really good understanding of how these two things work together. They had a larger, bigger picture understanding of the way marketing and sales related, and they gave respect to both aspects of it. And they understood that when they made the cocktail, that there needed to be a certain amount of both of them in that cocktail for it to work. And they didn't dilute it ever. They didn't. That's how I view the CRO role, is not someone who's responsible for those things in terms of execution. They're responsible for finding someone, if I may be blunt, like you. I want you to run my marketing organization because I know you're going to be brilliant at it and you're going to bring to it what I need. So I'm not going to find somebody who's a tactician and say, you're an amazing performance marketer, I'm going to make you my CMO. No, I want to find someone who is a marketing expert who will run my marketing organization, that will talk to the sales organization the way that I know that you know how. So it's about finding the right people, constructing the right competencies. And the reason why I sort of doubled down on this idea of someone running it is because I do think that what happens is, this is like where I think the human part comes in, is that when we have a bunch of people that are running different groups of an organization inside of one system, and they all have a C-suite title, it's very risky to assume that they're all just going to get along and work together. What ends up happening is, I do see this a lot. I see a lot of things where, factions are created around the way people are incentivized, and it becomes easy to kind of break down. And if you just have one person being like kind of the overseer, not the doer, but the overseer, it reduces the risk of that happening, and it increases the possibility that the engine will be more uniform. So that's all I'm trying to solve for, really, is the alignment problem, right? Not find a unicorn that can do everything. They don't exist. And I wouldn't purport to look for anybody like that. So that's one thing I want to say. So I think it's an important distinction to make about the way that I view that role, not as a superhuman, it's just a smart person that knows this stuff,
Yeah, and I don't disagree with any of that either. I think we're pretty much saying the same thing, because actually it's not about titles, and it's about what is this role and what are we trying to do?
What's the outcome we're trying to do here?
And maybe just our approach is just a little bit different. Maybe you're a bit more modern than me, and maybe I am a purist. I don't know.
Okay.
But the way we would handle that, Warren, is we would just have good old balanced scorecard with behavioral, are you being an asshole this month or not?
No question. That's where the other stuff comes in. It's like having grown up.
And then performance management,
yes. No question.
And there's none of this goes
No,
on
I
in the
agree.
organizations that I've been in.
I agree. There isn't. There isn't. And I think it has to do a lot with, I do think, again, I'm very much a sort of a bit of a cynic, if you will. It's money. We've uncovered an economic engine that is extremely attractive to business community right now. I mean, this is a crazy juggernaut. I mean, you have companies that can become $1 billion in valuation in 2 years today. Yeah, it was unheard of before, like the way that we can do this. And it's very attractive to organizations that want to get return on investment. And so businesses, the digital, let's call it like the online or the SaaS business model, is no different than a stock market portfolio that you can invest in and the products can yield a good return. And when they're looked at that way, they're just treated that way. So I sort of think like there's a way I speak to my clients who are CEOs, founders of companies. I say, you have to figure out philosophically what you want to be. So let's say, for example, you're a founder, you're a brilliant person, and you created some solution that's really amazing to solve a problem that's really amazing. Okay, you've reached this point where you've solved this problem. Was the impetus for that because you believe that this problem is an important problem to solve and you want to be someone who solves it? Or was it because you think this problem could make you a lot of money? Solving this problem make a lot of money. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with either one. I'm saying it's just be honest with yourself. Like if you look at the marketplace, you go, wow, this business would be great. I can turn this thing around in 3 years. I can exit in 3 years. I can make a lot of money with this business. Okay. That's the philosophy you have. So you're probably going to run an organization that's going to reflect that. Whereas if I want to be like the number one solution in the marketplace in 20 years, it's a completely different philosophy and you're going to run your business differently. And I think that's the point at which founders need to reconcile with themselves. Like, what's the real longer term purpose? And when I speak to my clients, I'm like, what is it you want to do? And if they say to me, yeah, you know what? We think we could be acquired in 5 years. That's fine. I mean, I don't have an opinion about that. But then you have to build a business that's going to get you acquired in 5 years. And it's going to look a lot different than a business that you want to be around in 25 years.
I wrote a book about this last year around the difference between high performance culture and human-led culture. And you need both. So whilst you've got a plan to sell in 5 years, that's a real high performance culture. That's how are we going to get there? What are we going to do? Where are we going to play strategic, perform, call each other out? But the culture's gone. People are burnt out. The culture's gone. It's toxic. We're teaching, the younger generation.
You burn a lot of coal doing that. Yes.
Like you have passengers along the way.
Yep.
Like you take people out. But then equally, you'll have our British NHS is like this. You have these human-led cultures. And again, it's like be nice to everyone, agree tacitly with everybody, no challenge, be nice, say the right thing, don't say anything at all. And so what happens is you have this culture of being nice, but then you don't perform. And what I argue for is what's wrong with learning that cerebral how to drive a business with the heart of how we lead the people through that. And I think you can do both.
I do.
And what I'm looking at
I agree.
is businesses that are just really toxic, but firing ahead and getting the money in and forgetting about the people, or the people that are just about the people and absolutely delivering naff all and then going out of business because, they don't challenge or have constructive. And so what I'm saying, and I went off and trained in all of this so I could be a better leader and I could help other leaders be better leaders, is, we've got to be able to learn how to humanize the growth, because actually we go faster, and it's proven. There's so much research to say when you really consider the blend of the performance and the culture together, you go faster, you go quicker, you go more aligned, and actually without that toxicity that really takes a toll on everybody and their performance and their productivity, like that's the holy grail. And so I guess I'm arguing for let's just stop being absent-minded, short-sighted and ego-driven with everything we're trying to do in this space, because actually there is a better way. But for some reason, we're not investing in people. Like I even wrote an article about, you look at the MarTech industry and how much money goes into MarTech in organizations globally. Like it's going to become a $2 trillion industry by 2027. I think it's something like 500 billion now. Like imagine if we invested even 25% of that into people. Like, wouldn't we be more productive, happier? Like this global bullshit that's going on at the moment would be softened. And like, I just think we're investing in the wrong things for the wrong reasons. And I think we all need to just take a breath, go do a yoga class, do a meditation, and come back calmer and cleaner and just a little bit more considered in what we're doing, instead of this growth at all costs, go, 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 fuck the people. Like, it's just wrong for me. And I just can't sit back and watch it happen, because it's a car crash. But also, as a mother, like, my kid's about to enter this workforce in the
Same,
next 5 years. Like,
same.
I don't want her coming into this.
Yeah, I know.
Like, it's not a
my,
nice place to be.
my daughter just graduated college this weekend, and I feel the same, like, they're so innocent, when they come out of school, and they have these bright ideas about people and stuff. And it's like, I understand that, like me and you are confronted with reality and we adjust. But I agree.
And
I'd
I've
rather
spent
be
17 years bringing her up to be a really, really good person. But
same.
I don't want the workforce and all of this nonsense changing her,
Right.
because she is a good person and she'll do great stuff in her life. But I just don't think any of us want to sit, like, we're not designed to sit in this for a long period of time. And yeah, do you know what? Money is brilliant. We want to earn the money, but not at the cost of people and like people just and the planet, right? Like, I'm not a big woo-woo spiritual person, but I just think there's got to be some common sense and some balance in what we're doing.
There's no doubt. And I no doubt, I agree. I've seen that we've created a beast that, like, the good news, I think, is this, that these sort of things, they burn themselves out.
Yeah, they do.
They do. You said it already, right? I mean, everybody in this equation isn't going to survive this, right? I mean, think about it. I mean, how many people can work like this, and how many people, and the other side of it too that we didn't talk about, which I don't want to get too much into it, but it's just an important part of it, is the consumer themselves. They're tired of this too. People don't want to be sold to like this anymore. They're sick of being barraged every 24 hours with stuff. And,
they're judging organizations based on how they treat their staff.
No question. And so I think there's like a lot of things where everybody that's in this ecosystem, including the marketplace that we're trying to sell to, we've cannibalized our own audiences, and it's good in a way. I think that when we start to see the backlash from the consumer shutting their phones off and not responding to things anymore, it's a message to us to, like, okay, I think we got it. Everybody made a lot of money, and maybe that wave is over, and we might not do it anymore. I think
I wonder if that's what all of this is at the moment. Sometimes when you go through these real monumental moments in history, you see that there was a period of real fear and uncertainty and unsettling times. And, you see in society and politics, a lot of this disturbing stuff going on. I've just been going through like the Bolshevik revolution with my daughter for at GCSE. Like, I wonder if we're in this moment where it's bubbling, and we're deciding like what we want to be as a generation for the next generation. And I think we're there.
We're definitely in the middle of we're sitting in the middle of two new paradigms. And, it could be long. So it could, as a matter of fact, I think that the world moves fast, so things change quicker than they used to. But I still think that it takes a long time for certain longer term things to seed themselves. So I do think that we're in the middle of almost like a tectonic plates of two larger things happening. And I think that it may take a long enough time that there are certain people that might have an entire career inside of this transition. But it's okay. And I think that what I'm seeing is this, like, all the things that are happening in the marketplace are a response to this either sublimated, subconscious reality that we've reached peak nonsense, and then the more aware reality that we reach peak nonsense. And I think these voices are, disruptors are coming forward. And I think it's good. So I sort of like mixing things up a little bit.
And I guess that if this has resonated with anybody listening, I guess it's, you've got a voice as well.
Yep.
And you can stand up and say, okay, let's move quicker to what this new world is going to be, because this is really uncomfortable and very distasteful where we are right now. And change brings out some really bad behavior in people, because it comes from fear, like you were saying, survival and fear. Like, if we've got a little bit more certainty and more of us coalesce around what the new vision and the new world is going to be, because we want a better world for our kids and the next generation. Like, get your voices together, come together and create this new, like we've got the marketing revolution of gone, we're building that. Like, what's our new code of excellence? What does marketing now need to be in this new generation, instead of just letting it figure itself out? Like, let's just go create it and make it happen, because we can't sit around moaning on LinkedIn, crying about how, bad marketing's being kicked and punched. Like, let's just go and make the change, right? We've all got a voice. We've all got the ability to be a catalyst. And so I would just say, as we wrap up, that would be my plea to everyone. Like, let's just all be part of the the change that's needed.
Well, you certainly are. I mean, you put your voice out there, and I understand. But I worked for a company in the UK for a couple of years, and I did note the culture is, different there. It's much more polite, and sticking your neck up is not as in the US. Everyone's got a big mouth in this country, and it's good or bad, But I appreciate it. I think it's great that you took a stand and you put your voice out there and you took the hits and you took them for a lot of people, and you did it with class. And I think you made amazing points, and your message is great. And I'm so glad that we met and we're talking, and I know we'll be talking more. So what are you doing now? And how do people what's next for you now? How do people work with you, or what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so I'm just helping businesses just do better things, just be better, just everything we've talked about today, because I've got the background of being a marketer. I started in sales, actually. I didn't say that at the beginning, but I did 5 years of sales,
Got
which
it.
is again why I really understand
Yeah.
how this stuff works. But I just help exec teams, C-suite, who put those plans together, but to rally the people behind in a more aligned, constructive, collaborative way. That's everything I do. I went and studied organizational psychology 5-6 years ago, and I just blend the two together. Now, how do you do cool strategies, but really lead from the best place that you can, instead of dragging people along and in that toxic world? So that's what I do. So people can come and find me, and if any of that resonates and they think we need a bit of Emma in our organization, then hit me up.
Okay. Well, this is great, as I expected. I knew we'd have a great conversation, and this is a lot to think about. Thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you more, and really appreciate you. So
I'll
thank
be
you so
back
much.
if you'll have me.
Of
I'm
course.
sure there's so much more.
Oh, there is. We could do another 3 hours on this, and we will. I have some thoughts on how we can do that. But thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Anon. Look after yourself.
Thank you for listening to the CRO Spotlight Podcast. The CRO Collective's mission is to help CROs succeed and help founders and CEOs build CRO-ready organizations. You can find out more information about our services at thecrocollective.com. That's thecrocollective.com. And we look forward to having you join us next time.